Hi, I'm Joanne from the Full Spectrum Centre Limited, an award-winning wellness and vocational training centre, and you're listening to the Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. This show is all about physical, mental, emotional and spiritual wellness, and it's for people who are looking to improve their overall health and well-being. Each week, I'll share with you all the positive takeaways, tools, techniques and tips that I've gathered in both my personal and professional wellness journey that will help you to look, feel and be well. With a dose of motivation and meditation to keep you going, I'll be joined by a few friends who will be sharing their insights along the way too. Welcome to episode 19 of our Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. I'm so happy and excited to be back here with you for our 19th episode. Now today, my special guest is Dr. Neesha Patel, who is a senior health psychologist at East Lancashire Hospital's NHS Trust. Neesha qualified as a health psychologist in 2014 and she's worked in obesity management for over 5 years and in diabetes for over 10. She has specific expertise in the psychological aspects of obesity and diabetes management, and she is passionate about helping people to change their behaviour, to lose weight and adopt a healthy lifestyle using psychological techniques. She is also a massive fan of reflexology, and I see her regularly in my practice. And I'm absolutely delighted that she's found the time to chat with me, and I just know that you're going to get so much from this episode. So welcome, Neesha, to our Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast.
Hi, Jo. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
You're very welcome. I'm so excited to chat to you today. We've known each other for a very long time, and I'm just so interested in your journey because it's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Yes. And I was actually thinking the other day how it's nearly, 9 years since we've known each other? So such a long time.
Making me feel old.
No.
I wanted to start our chat today about what the word wellness means to you.
Okay, so I guess the word wellness for me has actually probably changed over time. And I guess, obviously since meeting you, and having the kind of the sort of been on that reflexology journey as well, and really embracing sort of more holistic care, it's changed a lot for me. I think now the way I see wellness is more about having a balance in my routine, which includes work, rest, relationships, and play even. I think all of these are really important elements for our wellness and well-being. And for me, it's about creating sort of a healthy, easy and small habits on a daily basis that I can maintain. I think prior to kind of, where I am now, like I used to probably set the bar a bit too high, try to do too many things in one go. And then after a while kind of realize it doesn't quite, it's not sustainable really. Yeah. The other thing around wellness I've learned over the years is also kind of being kind to yourself, especially on days where things don't go to plan. And also having that positive self-talk is all part of wellness for me. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is around maintaining good relationships. So really like that social connection, and where possible, trying to maintain that, because I think in our daily lives and, we get caught up in things and work and kids and things that actually, sometimes you realize it's been such a long time since you've spoken to your friend or a relative. But actually, once you speak to them, you come away feeling quite good most of the time. So yeah, I think it's helpful to have a balance of all these sort of factors, but also helps to kind of reduce stress, and also slowing down where possible is all part of my wellness journey.
Yeah. Those are all really valid points, and we're all guilty of not doing most of those until it's sometimes too late. We hit that brick wall and we're forced to reflect and look at where we've been and where we're going, and like you say, just take time and be kind to ourselves. You mentioned there about your reflexology journey, so tell our listeners a little bit about how you found reflexology.
Yes, absolutely. So reflexology, I think it must be this time 9 years ago. My mother-in-law, who lives nearby the centre, I think she saw an advert for reflexology somewhere, or she read about reflexology and how it's beneficial for health and well-being. But for me at the time, it was more around fertility and trying to sort of conceive our first baby. So it was something we were struggling with. So my mum, she came across this article and, she kind of showed it to me. I'm sure she cut the piece of paper out and gave it to me. And I think that's how I found you, because then I locally at the time, we were living nearby as well. So yeah, so I found you and came to see you. I remember at the time you must have been in Hyde, Central Hyde. So yeah, that's where it all started for me. And then you moved centres, I moved with you. Then obviously I moved out of Duckingfield, but continued. And that really helped. We actually then conceived, had our first baby, and then I had quite a traumatic birth. So I then went on to have the postnatal reflexology, and then kind of didn't stop. And we continued until baby number 2. I think I remember telling you I was thinking about having baby number 2, and I don't know what you pressed, but it was a completely different journey, in terms of conception, but also my birth. It was like natural birth, the most natural birth I could have imagined. So, and kind of water birth, which is what I've always wanted to experience. So yeah, that was a big tick. And then again, carried on with the postnatal reflexology and just, again, carried on ever since. So, but in fact, I found that through, I guess the word contagious is probably the right word here, because I know since having reflexology and had the benefits of it, I've actually vocalized a lot within sort of friends and family, especially those friends who've struggled to conceive, who I've tried, recommended it quite highly, but also relatives or friends that are struggling with their health in a way that, trying to get them to, look at other alternatives, not just the sort of medication model that we all kind of get stuck in sometimes.
Yeah. And reflexology is such a great treatment. It's one of those complementary therapies that ticks all the boxes. It works physically, mentally, emotionally, and energetically. And as you say, fertility and maternity reflexology, that's what I specialise in, is such a gift to be able to work with those techniques and see full spectrum babies born. And baby number 2. Any plans for any babies number 3 and 4?
No, definitely not. I'll carry the reflexology on, but just the normal.
No more babies,
please. Yeah.
I want to talk to you about your journey in health psychology, because you're a health psychologist and health coach, and I know you started off with studying diabetes as part of your work. So can you tell us a little bit about that journey?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So health psychology, I guess it was one of those fields that I hadn't really come across when I was at college or even university. I was actually enrolled to do business studies at university. I chose to do that, but actually literally weeks before I was due to start my undergraduate degree, I decided that I didn't want to do business and that I wanted to do the bachelor's in psychology. So yeah, it was a bit of a twist and turn, and thankfully managed to enroll onto the psychology undergraduate. But I think for me, it was more realised after finishing my A-levels that I wanted to be doing something in career-wise that was about helping people.
Yeah.
And at the time, I didn't really quite, connect the health and the psychology together. It was only when in my final year of undergraduate that I did a module in health psychology. It was a new module that came about, and kind of we all spent a semester studying it. And it's through there that I actually felt like this is what I want to do. We were introduced to the sort of profession side of it as well. So for me, then it became about helping people, but also helping people to live a sort of a happier and healthier life. So that's how I started sort of thinking about health psychology. And then I went on to do the master's in health psychology in London, literally after finishing the undergraduate degree. And then from then on, I spent a whole year full time studying health psychology. But also what we did there was, look at several different health conditions, but also look at other areas of health psychology, things like health promotion, adjusting to illnesses such as sort of chronic pain, diabetes, heart disease. So it was quite a broad range of topics that we covered in health. And then after that, I, like you say, I worked in Diabetes UK for a few years before applying to do a doctorate in health psychology. And that's where I really specialize in looking at diabetes within the South Asian population, and really honing in on the psychology side of it, of looking at how people in this sort of community and culture think about diabetes, manage their diabetes, because in my sort of South Asian population, there was a high prevalence of type 2 diabetes, which is closely linked to lifestyle as well. So, so I began doing the doctorate in 2009, but then took on another challenging course, which was the actual health psychology professional training doctorate. So if you like, I was doing 2 doctorates in parallel with each other. It was just lots of sacrifices at the time. Obviously, no children involved, so it was manageable. Spent lots of weekends working, whilst a lot of my friends, I guess, were having a good time. So I was a bit like, I've started this journey, and obviously I didn't want to give up. So I just carried on and just kind of viewed it as a short-term sacrifice for kind of like, those cliches about long-term gains.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the journey I went on. I mean, and then actually just recently last year, I have a book chapter in a clinical health psychology book, if anybody wants to read more about that. But that kind of explains a bit more in terms of the journey. I think the journey also taught me that actually having these qualifications is great, but it's actually doesn't quite end there. I think in any profession, any professional course you do, there's always more to do. It kind of never ends. You have to keep up with the training courses. For me, it was learning the sort of clinical and therapeutic models that went alongside health psychology, so I could actually, in reality, help people, help them to learn the psychological tools to help them make changes to their health and well-being as well. So after doing kind of like postgrad courses along, after finishing the doctorate, I guess my vision there was I wanted to get a job in the NHS. I think at the time it was that if you were to become a health psychologist and you wanted to practice clinically, NHS was kind of where you needed to be. And I was quite fortunate. I, came across a really nice consultant who I met at a seminar that I was delivering, who knew a job vacancy was coming up in the NHS, and I kind of applied for it, and I got the job. So I started working in sort of the obesity services in the NHS for a good sort of 3 to 5 years. And that's how I kind of went into looking at not only diabetes, but also, obesity, which is really closely aligned to type 2 diabetes as well.
So I mean, I'm aware of health psychologists, but I'm presuming that a lot of listeners, it's maybe the first time they've heard that term. It's certainly not the first thing you think of when you think of different departments within the NHS. So can you tell us a little bit more about why someone would be referred to a health psychologist and what's involved in the process, how you can help?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah. I guess this is something that I've got used to kind of talking about a lot more recently since kind of, launching Evoking House. Because as you say, health psychology, like in the sort of wider disciplines of psychology, is a fairly new discipline. And even though it's 30 plus years, it's still classified as a new field compared to clinical psychology that's been around for much longer. But in a nutshell, health psychology, what the kind of what it means to be a health psychologist is really trying to, understand, helping people to understand how our thoughts, feelings, our mind, for example, is kind of a driver in terms of how we think and sort of perceive our health. So what health psychology helps people to do is link the mind and body together, to actually understand how, our mind actually, can impact on how the thoughts and feelings and the emotions we may feel in our body. So in health psychology, some of the things, for example, that I look at is how people's anxiety, maybe their mood, their depression, impact on their behavior. So if we take, for example, weight management as an example, if somebody has a issue around comfort eating or emotional eating, I would first of all get them to understand where the triggers are for this. So what are the thoughts and sort of the feelings and emotions that are tied into them, into their eating behaviors? So what's the driver, for example? And sometimes you find that people's anxiety or overwhelming thinking patterns can actually cause such heightened emotions, things like fear, that actually the way they kind of bring down that fear, bring down the anxiety is by eating, because certain foods like chocolates or cheese, high carbohydrate foods, release those happy hormones, the same happy hormones that you might get from, let's say, antidepressants or even doing things like exercise. So health psychology really, it's connecting that mind and body together. It's helping people to understand how our mind is interlinked with our emotions, but also getting people to understand the sort of the psychological aspects that are involved in our everyday health and well-being, in terms of the habits that we create around our health, but also how the actions that actually then go on to form habits. If we continue to do the same thing every day, over time, that becomes automated, it becomes a habit. And once something becomes a habit, we kind of become less aware of it. But actually, those habits can often be quite unhealthy habits that then become quite harmful to our health as well.
It's a fascinating area of work, isn't it? The mind-body connection is such a powerful thing. And as you say, those thoughts and feelings we have, those emotions then drive our behaviours. And once you're in that habit, you've got to work, I feel, doubly hard to come out of that. And people don't realise how long it can take to form that habit.
Absolutely.
You're just most of the time totally unaware of these things, which is, I guess, where your work comes in to point that out to people. And it might sound like pointing out the obvious, but it's not, is it?
No, exactly. It's not. This is where the work I do with people, the first thing I do, and again, all of this is driven by sort of the clinical guidance out there for behavior change. But the first thing I like people to do is just pause, but also take time out and reflect and become aware. I think awareness is power. If we can, understand that, take a moment to understand what we're doing, mindfully, that is the fundamental part to change, is bringing those behaviors, those thoughts and feelings to the conscious, the conscious mind. That's where change happens. But you can only get to that point if you actually stop and actually look at what it is you're doing. And the way I ask clients to do that is to often keep a diary, keep a log. For example, the food and mood diary works really well to help people look at why is it they're eating at this particular time? What are the foods they're eating? How is this linked to their emotions? How does it make them feel? And then that helps to identify the patterns in their behavior over, let's say, a week. And that, again, that is a very powerful way to kind of start that change process as well.
And I'm guessing when you see it written down in front of you, you see that pattern recorded, that brings it more into your awareness. There must be some sort of light bulb moments for clients and patients to go, wow, that is what I'm being triggered to do this at this time.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of evidence out there now that writing, for example, journaling, similar in terms of when you write something down, it becomes real. You are releasing that from your subconscious into the conscious, literally in black and white. And just by doing that it's a very powerful process. And actually people struggle. I've had lots of patients and clients in the past, that think that actually, I can do this. I can monitor my behaviors throughout the week. But actually, when it comes to doing it, it can feel quite painful. It can feel quite daunting for people. And that's absolutely normal. And I always say, just do what you can, just even if you write down a word or a few words, or you tick the few boxes, do what's the easiest way that's going to help you kind of put that information down. So it's just starting somewhere, starting small is can be really helpful. But actually having that release, by writing, even verbalizing it out loud is a very kind of powerful technique to bring about change.
Yeah. So you've worked in the NHS and you've also worked in the private sector within health psychology and health coaching, and you have embarked on your own journey with your own business. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So you remember probably as long as I've known you, I guess, how I've always
You've been talking about it for a very long time.
Yeah. So, and I think when my first maternity leave is where it all kind of began. I started to keep sort of ideas and visions and, like a vision board, and just kind of visualize where I wanted to be with this, where I wanted to go with it. Even, I guess, before I even stepped foot in the NHS, I think I always had my own idea as to where I wanted to take everything that I'd learned. Doing a PhD, you are overwhelmed with information. It's 3 years of just reading and writing and research. So I think you get to that point where it's just like, right, what am I going to do with all this information? And I guess my frustration slightly coming away from that was, how do I get this out there? Like, okay, I had papers, I've got papers that are written in peer-reviewed journals, but how is the person down the road or, in the other town going to find those? It's all well and good them being in an academic journal, but it's getting it out there. It's making that real difference.
People you want to reach aren't reading those academic journals, are they?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I guess that's the thing to say about health psychology. There's a few arms to it in terms of profession, and you've got that clinical arm, and you've got the academic arm, which is very much the research base. So I knew I wanted to stay in the clinical field. So I started to read things and just keep my own notes in my little A5 book, which at the time I called Evoking Minds, and obviously now I've called it Evoking Health. So so I think that I always knew that this day would come, and it was just actually practice what you preach, just actually do it, just start, just get it going. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's the progress. It's actually starting somewhere and just taking the plunge. So so I actually set up private practice pre-COVID, so 2019. I had a client, and obviously went into lockdown, and that client came to a natural end anyway. So then I kind of paused, and then I went back to sort of, had to adjust really to the life of living with COVID. So I had to park it for a bit, so carried on with normal everyday job and all of that. And then I think the last couple of years, I've just kind of come back to it. And I think what I realized also is, I think when you work for any organization, there's always going to be some inner conflict. And often I find now it's related to your values or my values. And for me, what I learned actually along, the journey of graduating from, the PhD in health psychology, doctorate, is that integrity is a big part of me, my work, and my life.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, for me, it was always about, do what it is I'm kind of either here to do or what we've said we're going to do. And I know that's not always easy. Understandably, any organization has their own financial and time constraints. So you always have to be, sort of flexible, but also efficient. And I think sometimes I kind of did struggle with this. And I guess this, again, was another driver for me to think about, well, how would I do this? How would I do this differently? And so within my own clinical practice, it gave me a sort of the first-hand experience of actually what patients needed. But also I got to learn about how these struggles came about. And to me, if some of these root causes that I was learning about and presented with in clinic could be dealt with earlier on in life, then perhaps people wouldn't go on to depend on things like alcohol, food, smoking, drugs, all the coping behaviors that then kind of people come to for me to help them either overcome them, or like with food, it's soothing emotions, for example. So although I'm at an early stages of kind of launching Evoking Health, educating people on, things like what is a health psychologist, what do they do, and this is where I guess the coaching aspect for me has recently been introduced.
Yeah.
Because even in the last month or so, really kind of spending a bit more time on Evoking Health, I've come to realize also that, everybody needs, let's say, 6 sessions of therapy, to overcome their problems. And that's fine. So for me as a psychologist, it's important to distinguish that and offer people the coaching, because sometimes I found that people just need that single session to have that safe space, process their needs and problems, and just find some clear solutions, set some realistic goals and move on. And that for people is often, it's enough, really. They can, they can actually go off, do what it is they plan to do. But again, what we were saying before, just by saying it out loud, writing it down, it's such a powerful way to take that first step.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where I am at the moment with it. But I think for me also, it's learning through this journey and kind of like, there's the psychological aspect of it, people that have those sort of more complex issues around some of the health behaviors, but also people that actually need that sort of coaching session as well.
Yeah, just to pick up on what you said there, 9 times out of 10 before we've even got a client on the couch, if we're doing massage or the chair, if we're doing reflexology, just that 20-minute chat about how they're feeling is sometimes the most therapeutic and powerful part of the session. And
Absolutely,
we've not even the treatment they're booked in for. So you're right, it's such an important aspect to be able to release that, how you're feeling, and bring about awareness. So sometimes people aren't even aware they're feeling what they're feeling until you talk about it. And just like with body work, sometimes somebody doesn't realize a muscle is tense until you actually massage it, because we're just completely unaware of what's going on in our bodies and our minds. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned that obviously you've been thinking about setting up your own clinical practice for a long time, but you really took the steps pre-COVID. How do you feel personally and professionally that COVID and the lockdowns have affected people's health from a psychology point of view?
I think COVID has, from a psychological point of view, has created a lot of anxiety in people. I think there are people still out there that are afraid to be in sort of large crowds, or, to kind of engage in those experiences that they may have experienced, engaged in pre-COVID. So I think from a psychological aspect, it's still that anxiety of being around people, probably even catching COVID again, or if for those that haven't had COVID yet, catching it for the first time. For some people, I think there's been other positive psychological benefits where people have actually managed to maintain some of the health behaviors, like going for walks or fitness, exercise. I spoke to somebody the other day who said, they really started to eat well, started to cook more at home from scratch, because obviously during COVID, there were no restaurants, very much at the start. Even the takeaways, everything was closed. So we had no choice but to try to either, cook or have some healthy options like ready meals, whatever you had, you could have access to. So I think for some people it's been a way to create or try new things, which they've managed to sustain, and it's enhanced their well-being and taken them on a more positive health journey. And I think for others, there's also been financial constraints. It really has changed the way people have their lifestyles in terms of the things they may have been able to afford, or, people might have been going on 3 holidays, but now they go on 1. But also psychologically, I think it's impacted a lot on relationships. I think we've seen probably a rise in people, families breaking up. And that itself comes with stress. So a lot more stress, I think, on the body and the mind. The stresses that probably weren't there before COVID, perhaps, have probably made COVID has probably, impacted on some of those, especially with relationships. Children, we've seen, I've learned a lot about children suffering from anxiety as well. At the start of when we had lockdown, all the schools were closed. So, people, that social connection between children, and their children are very young. So then when they did have to go back to school, a lot of children struggled to do that as well. And that then spiraled anxiety, not only in them, but a lot of stress for parents. So I think the psychological impact has been positive and negative and it's very much around how each individual has managed to manage COVID, or actually kind of adjust to kind of living with COVID, as they say now, as well.
And it's going to take a while, isn't it? A long time for everyone because everyone was impacted in different ways. So it's going to take us all a long time to just get back to some kind of normality and heal from it, really. I was chatting to one of my mums, my fertility reflexology mums, who had her baby in lockdown. And so for a long time in his very formative years, he was wearing a mask. Everyone was wearing a mask around him. And he now has problems interpreting facial gestures, because he's so used to not seeing people's faces that he's now struggling to communicate, and it must be very scary to suddenly see somebody's face in face. We just don't think about the impact on the very young age group that was born into, most of my mums, when they have new babies, go to baby sensory classes, baby massage, take them swimming. None of that was being able to be done in those first few months. So I think we forget about those babies that were born right at the beginning, that have missed out on those early years developmental activities.
Absolutely. And that is a time where, babies do, that social connection, that exposure is so important.
It's been a tough time, but we're through the other side of it. Like you say, we've got to learn to manage it and live with it. It's not going away, but we can get back to normal and just and I agree with what you said about there are positives and negatives. For me personally, having to shut the doors and not go to work when I'm a workaholic and I work crazy amount of hours a week, that especially in that first lockdown really made me look at, I'm not doing anything for me, and it gave me time to do stuff for me. So I think the positives we can take out of that is to just learn from those
Absolutely.
those behaviors and maybe mistakes we made in not putting, it's what you said right at the beginning, it's about being kind to yourself and giving yourself time. And so talking about that, how do you practice self-care? What does your daily self-care routine look like?
My daily self-care routine is good question, actually.
With 2 kids.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I think I have a split self-care routine, when it comes to it's managing sort of kids. But I think for me now, what I find works really well is waking up early. As much as it can be quite painful, especially at the moment when it's dark, it's cold. It's hard to get out of bed, but actually what we were saying at the beginning, being a psychologist, creating healthy habits, easy, one step at a time. I now kind of wake up, try to wake up at 5:45 a.m.
Wow.
But I think by the time I get out of bed, creep downstairs actually, so I don't wake my 4-year-old up, it's 6 a.m. But that's my golden hour, 6 a.m. till 7 a.m. I pray that nobody wakes up. That's when I sit down by my radiator, literally on the ground. So I literally ground myself on the floor. And, if I can, I do try to meditate in bed before I actually, get out of bed, because it buys me a bit more time. But also, I wake up a bit more calmer before I start my day. So it's a good way to start my day as well. But usually I come downstairs and I start with journaling. So that kind of expressing my sort of self in writing in my journal. I spend about 10 minutes doing that, just reflecting on the day prior, on the day before, or things I want to do today, but also things that are bothering me, like, and why they're bothering me. And I just really try to, connect with myself. And understand my thought processes and my emotions as well. So that's my sort of first 10 minutes. And then I kind of, I have different areas I try to fit in within that 1 hour. So I have different segments. So journaling. Then I try to look at things around my blog. So I try to write a blog for my website on a monthly basis. So I'll kind of carry on chipping away at that for another 10 minutes or so. And then recently, obviously, I'm trying to get my sort of hands around all the social media platforms, and I spend a bit of time on Canva, sort of designing my posts. So I do a bit of that because it really helps me to sort of focus and think about what it is I'm trying to say. So I create my social media posts as well. So I spend a bit of 10-15 minutes doing that. Then I try to read something uplifting for about 5 minutes. I have various books my go-to books that I like to read. And sometimes I read things that I've read before, like something's triggering me or bothering me. I'll go back and read a chapter on that. So it helps me to process and understand. And again, I've been my own therapist. Like, okay, what do I need to do here to overcome this feeling or this emotion or this thought? So I do that. Or if I don't get time to do that, if something's taken over in terms of the blog writing, I'm in my flow, and I run out of time to do any reading, then I will listen to a YouTube channel that I subscribe to, various ones on sort of motivation, law of attraction. So I'll do that whilst I prepare my coffee or, start to prepare breakfast for the kids as well. So that's my golden hour in the morning. But for me, that is my best hour in my day, really. Best way to start my day. My self-care routine unfolds through that, mentally and physically. It's my creative time, and it also aligns with my values. So now, since the new year, I'm very passionate about values and very much around. I really have a strong belief around values being the driver. So I have like 3 or 4 values in my journal that I then have, like, okay, for today, what's my values around work, my the business, self-development, self-care. And then I try to like set small goals around those values, and that really helps me to kind of set, if you like, realistic but also kind values, like things that I'm not going to punish myself so much to get these things done, but I'm going to tie them into the values and make them work for me. So for example, when the kids get up, the value there is relationships and caring. So it's really helped me to reframe the fact that actually getting the kids ready for school and giving them breakfast and all of that, it's value, it's meaningful, it's important. So yeah, it's really helped me to kind of have that kind of school run, or the school hour. It's made it more positive, if you like, for me as well. And then after the kids have gone to school, I try to do 10 minutes of just some yoga stretches. If I can, try and squeeze it in whilst they're having their breakfast and they're not kind of falling out, I try to do it then. But if not, I just spend 10 minutes after they've gone to school. And then lunchtime, I try to get 10 minutes, just go for a walk around the block, get some fresh air, listen to a podcast, for 10 minutes, just to kind of have a break. Have something nice to eat for lunch, something healthy. So yeah, fuel myself, and then get ready for the afternoon, evening, and kind of make sure I sleep well. I think I've realized that sleep, it has to be the most important part of my self-care, because if I sleep well, I go to bed, in time, waking up early will become a bit easier, but also I will feel better, and I'll eat well, and it's a bit of a domino effect really for the rest of your day.
Yeah, sleep is so important. It's the key to health, really, isn't it? Getting enough sleep, because when we're asleep and we're in that deep sleep, it's when the body's repairing itself and re-energizing.
Absolutely.
So important. How do you de-stress when something stresses you out?
So I tend to have, I guess, a few things that I know of, like a mental notes in my head as to what's going to help me. So meditation, I find just 10 minutes of guided meditation helps me just to calm my nervous system and to really kind of feel that calmness, that kind of inner peace, if you like, just to kind of detach myself from everything going around, especially when things are very busy, very hectic, and there is a lot to do. So the meditation, I find, helps. Having a bath, if you like. I mean, there's actually some good evidence out there now that actually having a nice warm bath at least once a week helps improve mood. So it actually, reduces those symptoms of depression. So a warm bath, if I can, I try to do that. Yoga, again, that 10 minutes of sort of mindfulness by just stretching the body and releasing that tension and emotion helps. Of course, reflexology, when I have that, I find that really just helps me to relax and ground myself again as well. Tennis, I took up tennis last year, so I find whacking a ball really helps. Especially on a Thursday evening is my the coaching session that I attend, the group session we have.
Wow.
Thursdays can be quite, you get into the end of the week and it's just like, right, it's no better way than to have a tennis session in the cold, in the dark. I listen to podcasts a lot because, again, I just find they help me learn about myself, give me different perspectives on things. But also for my clinical practice, it's essential now because it's such a good way of learning new information, digesting that information as well. I seem to have, be able to do that and remember things a lot more from them as well.
Yeah.
And social activity, again, that social connection. It's, I think we've know this now from lockdown, how important it is to make time for any kind of social activity that's going to kind of help to just, have a break from everyday life and just connect with people, because we are social beings. And I think that's why we all struggled in lockdown, because we were restricted a
Yeah.
lot of the time. And again, this is what I tend to say to clients as well, is when people go in that restriction mode, whether it's to do with health or anything else, it doesn't work, because we as humans do not like being restricted. It's not how we've evolved. Even with children, you try to restrict them. What do? They do the polar opposite. So, yeah, those are kind of my go-tos for distressing moments. But also, I think the other one actually to add to that, Jo, is aromatherapy. Like just the smells. I have a couple of electric diffusers, and I just find those amazing, like just switching them on and just smelling the relaxing smells like lavender and whatever I've got, that's in the house, just putting that in, eucalyptus even. It just changes that brain chemistry. And actually, again,
it's such an underestimated field. People who think it smells nice, but the actual physiological effect of smelling those smells, whether you burn it in an oil burner or you diffuse it in a diffuser or you're having it in a massage, it has physical, mental, emotional and energetic benefits. So I think it's very underestimated as a field.
But the thing is, it's such an easy way to relax as well. Either you spray something or you turn something on. It is just the easiest thing you could do, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And really good for your health. In lockdown, I've been an aromatherapist. I do aromatherapy massage. I've done it for a long time, but I found a company whose oils are just the most pure and the best quality, and they do individual blends that are just out of this world. And I changed all our cleaning products to theirs, so that all my cleaning products in the house and at the centre are completely natural, because when you look at some of the chemicals that are in those things, they're so bad for us, for our health and well-being, that replacing it with what I know is completely natural is a much healthier route to go down.
Yeah, absolutely.
In terms of your own wellness journey, what are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced?
I think the challenges for me, actually learning to swim, as part of my, fitness, or if you like, something that I've always wanted to do. I don't know, as a child, I really, really struggled to learn how to swim. And for me, it was like swimming's great because it's an all body workout, and it's actually quite relaxing as well, being underwater. So for me, I kind of thought, well, I need to do something about this. So I actually had swimming lessons as an adult, and now can just about do a breaststroke, which I'm quite proud of. So yeah, I think that was a challenge. And actually going on holiday, it was a real challenge for me, because I used to look at other people and think, oh, I wish I could just swim. And my husband is like fish, and I'm sat there watching. And yeah, it's like that kind of felt like I was missing out on that experience. So I would say to anyone that, as an adult who can't swim and wants to learn and has always wanted to learn, I'd say go for it. There are so many places now that do adult swimming lessons. So yeah, that was one challenge, which I'm glad to say I managed to in the end sort of overcome. The other challenges to my wellness journey, I guess, was something we spoke about earlier. I've always, made time for wellness and for my health from a really young age. I remember at 16, I joined the gym just to kind of get exercise in, and just kind of somewhere where I could go just to have my time away from home and college and all of that. So it's always been an important value for me. Things like even eating well and being conscious of food. And I think the other main reason for that is being, again, as I said before, coming from the South Asian community, we have a high prevalence of chronic conditions like type
Yeah.
1 diabetes, type 2, and heart conditions. They are the number one causes of kind of morbidity, mortality. It really affects longevity. So for me, it was very much about reducing the risk, and I guess it still is that way. So for me, that wellness journey started at a very young age, but I think through that, challenges have again been time. I think for all of us, time is always it's hard, but I reframe that now to actually focus. It's not that I don't have time now. It's more about, okay, where's the focus going to be? Where's my next half an hour? What am I going to spend that doing? So, and spending that time doing bits of everything, like 10 minutes of yoga, 10 minutes of kettlebells, or 10 minutes of running. So it's kind of, the challenge is there, but it's reframing that challenge and trying to get the best out of the time that I have available. The other challenge I think was through wellness has been my pregnancy and conception. I guess I think that was a real huge shocking challenge, if you like. I think as a woman, or maybe I was a bit naive at the time, you think, well, why would I struggle to conceive? Or what there's going to be no issue. You never even stop to think about the fact that it was going to be an issue.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said about when you consciously try to plan for a baby, there's something that changes in the body. Now, I think a lot of it is to do with the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that obviously as a psychologist, because you start to overthink things, or you become quite focused, or you magnify your thoughts, or over catastrophize things. And basically you stress your body out. And when you're in stress mode, it's not gonna want to make a baby straight away. Let's say it's not that it's never going to do it. It's just it's going to be trickier. So for me, it was really learning how to relax, how to kind of de-stress, and really, really listen to my body. Really, really eat the right foods. But the other challenge for me was, it wasn't just for me, but also educating my husband and working as a team to be on the same journey. That was a real, real challenge. I do strongly believe that, I think, like I said before, reflexology for me has been a lifesaver in a way for that whole time, that difficult time I went through with conception. So yeah, although it was a challenge, I feel as though in the end it became a real positive part of my learning, my journey through pregnancy, and kind of conception as well. And it's something that it'll always be a part of me, but something I'll always be able to share and hopefully help other women and families to know that there's always hope through sort of the complementary therapies as well. So yeah, and also the other challenge to add to that was the birth, the trauma of the first pregnancy, of the birth. So yeah, that was a huge challenge, huge adjustment time. That I then, to kind of reconnect with my body. Even things like walking was tricky for weeks.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so I think that those would have been some of the biggest sort of physical and mental challenges of my wellness journey.
Yeah. Is it, having worked with couples for nearly 20 years on that fertility journey, and one of the reasons I specialize in that is I have polycystic ovary syndrome. So for me, having a child wasn't an option. My best piece of advice that I always give to my couples is stop trying for a baby. And I don't mean mechanically, I mean stop focusing on it, because you're right, couples become obsessed with it, and they think about it every minute of every day. And if you're telling your mind that, there may be an issue, or there is an issue, and it affects the relationship. So, it becomes much more about, right, let's go and have sex so that, I'm ovulating, let's go. And it affects the relationship, because that just becomes a chore that you have to do, which has a knock-on effect. So that's why I always say, stop trying.
Yeah,
live your life, have date night, you know, eat healthily, do all the things that are going to increase your fertility, but stop thinking about it. And if it's not happening in the timescale you want, don't sit there thinking, oh, it might never happen, because we all know now, the research done onto mind-body connection, your body responds to what you're telling it. So effectively,
absolutely.
you're blocking your fertility by saying it's never going to happen. It is basically the law of attraction working inside your body. It probably won't happen.
Exactly. Yep. No, I totally agree. That mind body connection it's so powerful, and I think even more powerful, you know, when it comes to pregnancy, and especially like you say, conception,
Yeah.
because you can become quite obsessed with it. You know, your whole world, your whole life, your whole focus, it just takes over.
Yeah.
So it is kind of worth just, you know, finding ways to kind of enjoy the journey as opposed to, you know, making it a chore, as you say.
Yeah, absolutely. What are some of the most important lessons that you've learned in life?
Wow.
Many more to one.
Interesting question, actually. Yeah, there's where do you start? I guess I think for me, one of the most important lessons that I've learned, and I guess there's different parts of life, isn't there? You've got your work, your
Mm-hmm.
family, your career, but I think one thing for me now is integrity.
Mm-hmm.
Being integral is, I think I've learned, is one of the hardest things to do. It can be quite isolating at times. You can be quite solo when it comes to integrity. And by this, I mean doing the right thing, you
Yeah.
know, and, you know, feeling comfortable with the choices you make in life, in any aspects of your life. I think I've learned that, you know, whatever decision you make, whatever choices you make, they've got to be yours. They have to align with you, your values, your
Yeah.
principles. And the other most important lesson I've learned is, you know, kind of in line with this, is not having expectations. I think that when you start to expect things off people, for example, you often may set yourself up for failure, heartache, disappointment,
Yeah.
which causes even more stress. So actually, you know, if you're going to do things, let's say for people, or you're going to do things for, you know, in the community even, or for work, or things that you want to do, just don't expect anything off that. Don't expect anything in return. And if good things happen, you know, things come your way, good things happen in return, great, embrace them. But
Mm-hmm.
for me now, I go wherever I go, whatever I do, I try not to have any expectations now. So that for me gives me inner peace, and it reduces stress, because
Yeah.
actually I don't have to, you know, stop you from worrying about what, you know, what the other person's going to say or do or anything like that, right?
Yeah.
The other thing, again, to add to that is, control what you can. Sounds a bit like a cliche, but control what you can, not others, not what
Yeah.
others do. And again, that's quite empowering, because if you can take control of what you do and focus on your actions, and not worry about other people, you're only going to grow. You know, that's
Yeah.
going to lead to personal growth. And so that's going to give you more self-esteem, more confidence and belief in yourself. So control what you can and not others. And the other thing is, I've learned is to, and this is again really, really hard thing to do, is to believe in yourself, and be true to yourself as well. And don't try to fit in,
Yeah.
because again, when you try to fit in, it doesn't last. It's you know, you kind of lose yourself, I think. And some way or another, within, you know, whether it's a month or 2 months, your values will start to show up. And, you know, when you try to fit in, often you're sacrificing your values and who you are and who
Yeah.
you want to be. So I've learned that try not to fit in. And again, that's a really hard thing to do, because we live in a society of FOMO, that whole fear of missing out.
Yeah.
But I think
And
that
wanting to belong and be part of
wanting to be
something that
loved.
might not necessarily be right for us.
No, and as humans, we all want to be loved. We all want to be connected.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that if you know your worth, and if you work on your self-worth and value yourself, which is, I think is an essential part of anyone's journey, because it's not something you get taught in school. We don't get taught, well, I never certainly got taught in school how to love yourself or how to value yourself. There was never a lecture or a class on that, was there? So I
There
think
should
that
be.
there should be, absolutely.
Never mind teaching everyone maths till they're 18. We should be teaching kids how
I
to
would
love themselves
happily
and take care of
volunteer.
themselves.
Yeah, but if you value yourself, believe in yourself, and that's going to help other people value you. And I think the best thing you can do is add value to people's lives, make a difference to people's lives. And you can only do that if you know your worth, you love yourself, and you believe in yourself. And then the other couple of things, I guess, to round this one off in terms of important lessons, is being grateful.
Mm-hmm.
We do, I don't know, this seems to be on the rise at the moment. People do talk a bit about, there's quite a few influencers out there that talk about gratitude. There's lots of science now, about with the science side of it. What it's showing is it changes that neuroplasticity, the neuro sort of pathways in our brain. The wiring of the brain changes when you say sort of great things that you're grateful for, whether you say them out loud or you write them down. If you can just list 5 things, you'll find you've got more than 5 things. It ends up being about 10.
Yeah.
And grateful doesn't mean materials and possessions and money. That's not what it means. It means things like, having a warm drink, having that walk, speaking to your friend, having that self-care time, having some nice food. It's the small things that we now forget to be grateful for, and always want to focus on that goal, focus on that end result, which actually, in the end provides short-term happiness, because then you want to move on to the next thing and the next thing. So for me, I've also learned that materials and possessions actually they don't provide meaning and purpose and fulfillment at all. They're nice to have, don't get me wrong. It's nice to have nice things and be gifted nice things when it's a special occasion, but really they don't provide long-term happiness.
Yeah. I love those lessons. Thank you so much for sharing them. Finally, what advice would you give to someone listening that wants to live a healthier, happier, and more balanced lifestyle?
Okay, another cliche coming. But really, I would say manage your time. If there's anything you can do in those 24 hours that we have, is try to make the best out of the time that you've got available for you. That self-care time, either it's that golden hour, if you can have it either in the morning or any time of that day where you can find that time for yourself. Do what's going to, make you feel good. It's going to provide you with that meaning and purpose and make you feel like you've achieved something for yourself in that day. I think that's really, really important. Don't sacrifice sleep, because, again, sleep is a fundamental biological need. Just like food, we need to eat well and sleep well, but also move our body, because moving the body, again, it helps, with all the sort of the muscle, the joints, making them a bit more sort of flexible, moving them about, whether that's for you walking or, I don't know, if you enjoy running, whatever movement in your body. Try to move your body as much as you can, I would say, as well. Another piece of advice I would say, again, I've probably said this a few times, is identify your values. Really, really take a few moments to think about what is important to you and what you care about the most as well. And if you're struggling to kind of think of the values, I think that's where the things around just writing down what's important to you and what you care about, that in itself will start to help unpack some of those values. as well. And those values might be quite sort of generic values, things like self-care, fitness, honesty, responsibility, finance, those things. And then try to create sort of value-based goals. Like, for example, as I said before, with relationships, who are the important people in your life? What is it you need to do for them today? What connections do you need to make throughout the week with these people? Finance, again, it's such an important part of happiness and well-being, to know that there's a level of financial sort of planning and security as well.
Yeah.
The other thing I would say is, again, be present. Don't think the grass is greener. Don't compare yourselves to other people. Because actually, by comparing yourself to other people, I think that's can be energy that's quite wasted. Instead, you could spend that time again focusing on yourself, and engaging in self-care activities for you that's going to help you achieve your health and happiness as well. A couple of other things I find often help towards a balanced lifestyle, again, are things like things that we don't often think about, but it's having that vision. As you kind of mentioned on Instagram the other day, Jo, that having that vision board is really can be quite motivating, something visual, because when you look at something visual, it engages other senses in the mind and body that can actually help you take action. So, have a vision, follow your passion. And if you're feeling quite low and you've tried all these things, I would say read something uplifting or listen to something uplifting.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to learn, and I always think, for me, I'm always learning. I like to think that, yes, I have expertise in certain areas of my field as a health psychologist and coach, but I also feel as though I'm still a learner. I still like to think I'm learning every day, to help me grow and have that growth mindset as well. And finally, I would say, as I said before, is, to be grateful for the small things in life is such a fantastic way to create that positive mindset and that positive mind-body connection as well.
That is such amazing advice. Thank you so much for sharing it. I will put a link to your new website, because I'm sure our listeners will benefit from bobbing along and reading your blog posts. Your work is amazing. You have a wealth of knowledge and understanding, and you're going to help so many people. And I'm so grateful that you've joined us today on this episode of the Full Spectrum Wellness Podcast. So thank you very much, Neesha.
Oh, thank you so much, Jo. It's been so nice, and so having this kind of like authentic conversation. So thank you so much for inviting me today to talk on the podcast.
You are so welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Jo.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. I hope you found the discussion and the tips covered really helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you enjoyed this episode, please do leave a rating and a review and share it with your friends and family. Pop along to our website at thefullspectrumcentrelimited.com and join our self-care and wellness newsletter club. You'll receive our free 55-page printable self-care guide and workbook. Well, that's all for this episode, but I really look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, and bye for now.